So good afternoon and good morning. We have a small group here today, but we have very important information for all of you with two very talented, experienced, and prominent speakers, and I know you're going to be delighted to hear them. I'm Eileen Zweig, and I am with the Plaza Health Network. The Plaza Health Network started over 50 years ago by a group of Jewish women on Miami Beach because they saw a need to have a convalescence center for the elderly. They raised the money, they bought a house, and they had 12 residents. Today, over 50 years have passed, and we have over 1,000 beds in 7 centers, and a new one under construction, which is called University Plaza. It's right in the heart of the health district. We are here to help you and your families should you ever need us. We hope you never need us, but if you do, you have information in your kits, and you have my business card and my phone number. Don't hesitate to call. I'm going to introduce, Dolores Perdomo. Dolores is with Barry University and the University of Miami Center on Aging. And Dolores is going to be our first speaker because she needs to leave here by 1:15. There's a White House conference going on, even as we speak, at the Center on Aging at the University of Miami. So Natalie Rubenstein is our other speaker, and I will give you Natalie's introduction following Dolores. So thank you for being here, and here's Dolores.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm always happy to go out in the community and talk about... I think you need to speak closer. Closer? You know, there's something about me and microphones that we don't get along. I get distracted with them, so hopefully I won't get too distracted. But anyway, I really wanted to thank you all for inviting me and having this opportunity to share some information with you. I guess what I'd like to talk a little bit about is about something that is so exciting to me. And it's, we are part of an amazing period of history. Some of them have called it the global aging, because not only are we going to see a significant increase in aging adults in the United States, but actually it's happening worldwide. Currently, approximately 12% of the U.S. population is 65 years and older. It's projected by 2030 for this percentage to increase to almost 20%, actually as the baby boomers enter the Medicare years. The largest percentage of aging adults is going to be seen in what is called the oldest old, those who are 85 years and older. And actually what we're beginning to see is also an increase in centenarians. It used to be that maybe it was great if we could celebrate our parents' or our grandparents' 75th birthday. Today, they can easily make it to 100. Actually, currently, they estimate about 72,000 centenarians, soon to double by 2030. Most aging adults prefer to live in the community. It's only about 5 to 10% of aging adults that live in a residential facility. Most of them either live alone or with a family member. Now, what's fortunate is that aging adults are not only living longer, but they're living healthier lives. We've seen a definite decrease in the number of aging adults with limitations, and I guess that's why they're able to live healthier lives longer, right? However, the aging process sometimes will be filled with challenges and losses. And sometimes you will see aging adults that would have to meet the challenge, perhaps, of limitations with their cognition or physical problems, and in some cases also their independence. It's estimated that about 8 million aging adults require some type of help with their daily activities and personal care. Currently, the estimates of aging adults with Alzheimer's disease is 5.4 million Americans. Sadly, this number will also increase as more baby boomers enter the Medicare years. And by 2050, we estimate that approximately 16 million Americans will have Alzheimer's disease. What we've learned through research is that aging adults with strong social family networks are overall more healthy and more independent. And most of the support comes from family and friends. There are estimated about 43 million families who provide care to somebody over the age of 50. The statistics show that most of the caregivers are women. I guess because the life expectancy for women is longer. We expect for women to live approximately 18 years longer than a few years back, and men 15. Now, of the family caregivers, 20% of family caregivers provide care to somebody with Alzheimer's disease. What we've learned is that the caregiving process is a continuous process. It starts perhaps very subtle, and actually, many caregivers do not identify themselves as caregivers because caring for somebody that we love is something that we sort of do naturally. We learned it from our parents. It's our extension of our family behavior. But it's not until the person begins to do things that go beyond the realm of providing care for a small period of time or in small increments. It's estimated that caregivers, especially caregivers to Alzheimer's patients, can provide an average of 7 to 10 years of care, of intense care. Most caregivers provide care 7 days a week, and some of them even report that this is a full-time job, 24 hours a day. When I work with caregivers, and some of them are a little bit reluctant to letting go of this role, but what they don't realize is that just the same way that hospitals have different shifts where they require nurses to take care of an ill person, you, the caregiver, will not be able to withstand the amount of stress and demand of providing care, especially to an Alzheimer's patient. So slowly but surely, when you learn a little bit more of the disease, when you begin to understand a little bit of the behavior, and when you finally realize that you probably will not be able to do it on your own, that's when you slowly will begin to accept some of the help that may be available for you and your loved one. What we've learned through research is that caregiving comes at a very high price for caregivers. Approximately 40 to 70% of caregivers report symptoms of depression. 1/4 of them meet the criteria of clinical depression. Now, caregivers not only are emotionally affected, but they can easily be physically affected. Some research have even found a correlation or a relationship between caregiving and cardiovascular problems. What happens is this is what I say to all of the caregivers. You do a beautiful job of taking care of your loved ones. However, you do a lousy job of taking care of yourself. What I say to you is, if you're in an airplane and suddenly those mask comes down and you're traveling with a child, who should get that mask? Who? You. Because if you give that mask to the child, you may pass out and you will not be able to make decisions on what to do next, right? Well, the same concept applies to you providing care to your loved one and taking care of yourself. I've worked with many caregivers, And I know that you guys, first of all, want to do your best. You don't want to let go. So I say to you, if you want to make an investment, make an investment of taking care of yourself. Because if you do not make that investment, and something happens to you, all of your hard work is going to go out the window. Not only is the stress of caregiving being associated to physical problems related to cardiovascular, but also to immune deficiencies. They studied some groups of caregivers, and they found that caregivers who provide long hours of care are also susceptible to what we may consider a common cold or infection. And it's because when you're stressed, your immune system gets affected. Caregivers also complain, or they report feeling isolated. And a lot of times, they don't have the support that they need. I find that sometimes they focus on their immediate source of support, which is their family members. But you know what? It takes a very special person to be a caregiver. And not all of our family members have that special gift to be a caregiver. That doesn't mean that they don't want to help, but it means that they can provide help in a different form. In my experience in working with caregivers, children of aging adults really struggle with seeing their parents losing their independence. And some of them cope with it by not being involved or by not seeing the process. It's going to take you and your other family member the role of being an educator and letting them know what are some of the needs that you have. So we talked a little bit about the price, the emotional and physical price that caregivers pay. They also pay a significant economic price. It's said that unpaid family caregivers will contribute approximately $450 billion a year. As a matter of fact, caregivers are considered to be the backbone of long-term care. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've done at the Center on Aging. How many of you know of the Center on Aging at the University of Miami? Okay, 3 of you. I like to say that this is the best kept secret in Miami. It shouldn't be, right? We have a lot of experience and resources that hopefully you will come to learn about. Over the last 25 years, the Center on Aging has focused their research work on understanding the aging process and the caregiving journey. Our overall goal is to develop and evaluate interventions or programs, hopefully to decrease caregiver burden and distress, and improve the ability of caregivers to provide care. We also like to say that our goal is to improve the quality of life of caregivers and their loved ones too. And some of the special features of our programs, and we're very proud of that, is that our programs are community-based. What that means, and I like to say, you don't have to come to us, we will go to you. We realize that a lot of caregivers or a lot of aging adults may not have the ability to leave their house, to go to an office. So what we do, most of our program, if not all of them, we go to the house. We tell you about our program, and if you choose to participate, we enroll you. We collect information because the more that you provide us, the more that we can learn about ways of helping aging adults. And then we come and we implement, or we provide programs that hopefully you will use to help or to improve your quality of life. Another special feature is that we are a multidisciplinary team. What that means is that we don't work alone. We have engineers, we have MDs, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers that are part of our research team. And actually, We're very special in that we have a very strong engineering arm that has allowed us to develop programs that could be easily be implemented in the home. We also like to say that if you live in South Florida, you have to be culturally sensitive, right? So our programs, we've been fortunate enough to be able to work with different populations, with Hispanics, African Americans, Caucasians, and we recently concluded a study where we worked with Haitian caregivers. As an aside, this is a population, Haitian caregivers, that have really been neglected, and there's very little information, literature available to them. And we had the wonderful opportunity to work with them. And as I mentioned, one of the other strongest features of some of our programs is our use of computer and communication technology. What we learned through our research is that a lot of caregivers or a lot of aging adults, it was difficult to drive to different locations or to meet with a counselor or to work with a counselor. So we were able to bring technology into the home in the ways of a computerized phone system that allowed caregivers to participate in support groups. Or most recently, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, a program where we use a video phone. That one is pretty neat because you can be home and basically you can, by the use of a couple of buttons, you'll be able to see your therapist or your counselor through the video phone. We started basically our research 25 years ago, and we started with one of the largest research studies that has ever been conducted in the nation. And it's called REACH and REACH2. I don't know if some of you have heard of them or maybe have participated. But it is one of the largest efforts in studying caregivers across the nation. We were fortunate enough to work with 5 other universities where we looked at different programs that we wanted to know if it was helpful for caregivers. The Center on Aging not only works with aging adults and caregivers of Alzheimer's patients, but we also had a very nice study that we did with aging adults with spinal cord injury and their caregivers. I have to say, aging adults are living longer and they're getting in trouble. I had an 85-year-old gentleman that unfortunately he decided that he was going to pressure clean his roof by himself. And unfortunately, he sustained a very severe spinal cord injury. So we worked with caregivers of aging spinal cord injury patients. We used a computerized telephone system that allowed us to include caregivers in support groups and also allowed the spinal cord injury person to communicate with a counselor. Unfortunately, some of the spinal cord injury survivors did not have the mobilities of their hands. So we used a pretty good system that would allow them to communicate via speaker. The most recent one that we've done has been the video care study, and that was done with African American, Hispanics, and Haitian caregivers, and that's the one that used the video. Not only did that program provide caregivers or aging adults the opportunity to see their counselors, but through dialing into the system, they were able to obtain information via pre-recorded messages. One of the things that we also learned is that a lot of times, caregivers do not have the opportunity to attend conferences, and they want to learn from the experts. So we had a feature where we had experts videotape different topics, and they were able to connect to the system and listen and view them at their meeting. Most recently, we also started a study with working caregivers. Actually, it was nice because we started right in our backyard. We decided to look at working caregivers at the University of Miami. What we've seen through the years is that the profile of caregivers has changed slightly. It used to be about maybe 20 years ago that caregivers were mostly spouses. Now we're seeing that children are the ones that are caring for their parents and their family members. And most of the children are also employed full-time. So it's stressful to take care of a family, be employed full-time, and also, take care of your parents. So we decided to do something that could give them the flexibility of using what is called a computer interface, where they could go into their computer and go into our website and learn about different topics related to caregiving. They also had an opportunity to be part of a support group and view pre-recorded films and on specific topics, and also expert videos. We branched out as well to working with chronic fatigue patients and their partners. Again, this is a population primarily of women who have a very debilitating condition that most times does not allow them to leave the home. So again, we brought a system that we could use with them and also educate their partners about chronic fatigue. Now, the most recent study that we have out there is called PRISM. And I've left you a couple of these cards. And this one is a very neat study for aging adults. We basically want to know if aging adults are able to use a computerized system, a computer, to be able to expand your social network and learn more about how to take better care of yourselves. If you're interested, actually, this is a study that provides you the possibility of getting a free computer and training sessions for you to be able to use the computer and again, learn about different topics related to health, your health, and also community resources, how to use the internet, and also how to communicate perhaps with your family and friends via email. So, last but not least, I guess, I also wanted to let you know that the research that we do at the University of Miami, it's considered basic and what some consider also translational research. Basically what that means is that not only do we want to know if a program works at a laboratory, but we also want to know if the program works at a community level. We're very fortunate to partner with United Home Care. It's one of the largest home health agencies, and they liked our REACH program, and now they're implementing it themselves in the community. What that means to us is that research is not something that we learn from, but also we are able to keep it in the community, hopefully for other aging adults or caregivers to benefit from through specific organizations. Okay. Any questions on any of the information that I provided? I know I've given you a lot of information in terms of statistics and information about aging. I hope that you are as excited as I am to know how important you are in our community. You are truly very important to not only to the research community, but the community in general. This is your time. This is your time for us to learn from you, and for you to realize how important you are to our communities. Yes, sir. You have a question.
You had a statistic, I forgot what you said, that women, how many years old longer?
18.
18 years. Do you know basically what the average age for women and men is right now?
The average age is around life expectancies. Yeah, it's within the 75 to 80 range.
Well, one is men and one is women. What's the woman and what's the man?
Usually women can expect to live around, their early 80s, and men can expect to live, mid to late 70s. But let me caution you though, these are just basic statistics which are very important to report, general information. But, how long you live and how well you live has a lot to do with how do you take care of yourself. What do you think is the number one factor that is found to contribute to longevity?
Diet and exercise. Socialization.
Socialization, diet, and exercise. In addition to that, preventive medicine.
Right.
Think about it. Our grandparents, how often did they make it to the doctor? Now, it's recommended, depending whether you're a man or a woman, and depending on your age, it's recommended for you to visit the doctor at least once a year and do certain tests for preventive measures.
What would you say the major tests would be, preventive medicine tests?
The best thing to do, first of all, is to work very closely with your doctor, okay? Because he or she will know you best. And they go, the medical profession, they go by different age ranges. And depending on where you fall in that age range, they will know whether you have to check your cholesterol. Most women go to the doctor past the age of, 45 for mammograms, okay? Pap smears. And then men go to check their prostate about approximately at age 55, okay? And I'm glad that you had that question because it gives me an opportunity to sort of encourage you to do something else. Depending on where you fall in terms of your age, your doctor will recommend for you to check your cholesterol, your bone density, your colonoscopy, okay, your vision, your hearing. But I have to say that not many doctors are in the habit of encouraging you to check your memory. And that's something that I encourage you to do that. And I know a lot of us are scared to find an answer that we don't want to hear. Natalie will tell you a little bit more because she also has extensive experience in working with individuals with memory problems. But I hope that she agrees with me in that early detection is to your advantage, because most of the medications that are used for memory problems are best in the early stages of perhaps a memory problem. And incidentally, a lot of people have a misconceived notion about aging and memory problems. It is true that as we age, there are some degeneration of our function. It's a natural process, right? They say that we begin to grow older the minute that we're born. So, having, and I know some of you may be concerned with this, having Alzheimer's disease really is not something that you can expect in aging. There's a strong correlation between age and developing Alzheimer's disease. But not every aging adult, not every centenarian, or those who are 80 or 70 will develop Alzheimer's disease. If you begin to have problems with your memory, that's why it's important for you to check it, because there may be some other causes that may be related to your memory loss. And these can range from what is called reversible and irreversible memory loss. The reversible, one possible reversible cause of a memory problem could be related to depression. You know, in working with older adults, I have to say that we've done a very poor job at talking about the importance of mental health and aging. I think this is one of the most difficult periods in a person's life, because it's a period that is filled with changes and losses and challenges. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't born with a book that gave me any tips on how to handle some of these changes and losses, right? So sometimes it's very normal for us to react and feel depressed if we're met with a specific challenge, specifically a health challenge, right? Unfortunately, not many aging adults see a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist to work on some of these feelings. And I have to say that, you know, some cultures and some individuals and some generations shy away from seeing a psychologist because this is something that people go see, as somebody that people go see because, quote unquote, you're crazy. I have to tell you that about 87% of individuals that go see therapists, they have just normal social problems that can range from difficulties in communication with their loved ones, the loss of their loved ones, the loss of a job. These are all common problems that people will face throughout life. But aging adults, they shy away from going to therapists at a time where they need it the most. So, going back to your original question, what are some tests that I feel that it's important for you to focus on? Number one, work closely with your doctor. Have them review where you're at in terms of your age and your specific health needs. And don't forget to check your memory. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Connie. I would like to add something to your wonderful presentation. I have a doctor who is at University of Miami. He's my doctor, Dr. Paul Mendes, for 28 years. And he's an example of preventive medicine. And I wish that this approach towards the patient became more popular, because if we detect early, we prevent later on problems that might happen with our health. I believe that this doctor is working with the group of aging, and he strictly follows the rule how to prevent. And I'm an excellent example. In spite of my age, I am taking only levocetirizine and multivitamins. Many times I had a situation, my blood pressure was high. Apparently it wasn't high because of the changes in my system. It was a stress related. So you see, if you have a doctor who knows you and he is aware how to approach your problem, that's a blessing. And I wish we could have more doctors like that. Because ordinary doctor, when you go to the doctor, first he is asking, sometimes even they don't talk to you. Medication for this, they write a long list of medication, and apparently many times medication helps, but medication can create some side effect, and there are contraindications. Nobody even talks about it, and then later on those patients end on the hospital bed, and Medicare cost is skyrocketing. I think that something is wrong with our healthcare system, and I believe that prevention would be the step number one. And that's what I want to add to that, and I hope that your organization will promote it and to share with the whole group of the doctors from Miami, not only from Miami, nationwide, so we can do a better job toward it.
One of the things that, thank you so much, thank you for your comment, it's very important. One of the things that we're doing at the University of Miami is that this growth in the aging population is something that is going to create an impact in our healthcare system across, from social workers to nurses to doctors. Unfortunately, up until now, we really haven't been prepared, and that's why all of these disciplines are basically focusing a lot of the attention and preparing their professionals to deal with aging adults. Although there's a lot of similarities, there's also some significant differences in how to treat somebody who's aging. More than anything, how to sort of normalize and deal with some of the misconception and ageism that occurs. You know, how to teach doctors how to communicate with their patients from a mutual stand. I guess I have to say, your generation, a little bit of my generation, certainly not my children's generation, we have a different view of our communication with our doctors. My mom's generation is very hierarchical. The doctor is pretty much close to God. Whatever he says goes, right? And we don't dare question it. My generation is a little bit more daring, and you know, we want to know credentials and we want to know where they've been and what they've done, right? And we also want to be part of the diagnosing and treatment process. I say, doctors are expert in medicine, but you are the expert in your body. They can only recommend certain things that through their studies, they've learned that it could work. Nothing is 100% proof, okay? I've seen some doctors prescribe an antidepressant for an aging adult that functions beautifully, and then another one that doesn't function the same. Your role, okay, as an active patient is to educate your doctor about your health, how you feel, and your reaction to the recommendations. Your role is to educate your doctor also about your life situation in a sense. I also teach medical students, and one of the things that I tell them is that I know that you have the best intentions in prescribing some things and recommending certain procedures, but do not lose track of your patient, because perhaps that procedure that you feel is so important because you want to make sure that you sort of, cross all your T's and you dot all your I's. It may be such a struggle for that person to be able to do, from getting up in the morning, finding the right transportation, or even finding somebody that can stay with them once they have the procedure. So it's really up to you also to take this active role in your communication with your doctor and saying, okay, let's try this, or let's not try it. Let me tell you what my situation is, and let's see if we can find another way to treat my problem in a different way. So part of the preventive medicine is going to the doctor, but also taking an active role in what your treatments and recommendations should be, and if they fit for you. And if you have a doctor that you can't discuss or sort of express your thoughts, then I say you need to look for another one. Okay? Yes.
I don't know what you...
Yes, I have. Unfortunately, something came up and I have to do another presentation. I hate to leave you because this is the type of thing that I enjoy most, coming to the community. But I tell you, I leave you in one of the best hands, that she's going to tell you not only about her book, but her experience in working with aging adults and dementia patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dolores.
My pleasure.
Learned a lot about some of the research programs that you're doing at the university. And ultimately, the research helps everybody in the community, and that's why it's so important.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You have a nice afternoon.
Thank you for taking the time. We know you have a very busy schedule.
My pleasure, always.
Now it's my pleasure to just be careful driving down I-95. It's my pleasure to introduce Natalie Rubenstein. Natalie is very experienced. She comes to us after having been at the Wien Center for many years. The Wien Center is part of the Mount Sinai Medical Center, and I've known Natalie a long time. I know that she is an expert in working with families with patients with Alzheimer's and other chronic diseases, and so her bio is in your kit. Her time is more valuable to be speaking to you than for my giving you all the details about Natalie. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me today, and I really appreciate, as a caregiver, I took care of my mom for over 16 years in my home with memory loss. So I understand what it's like to be out, to find the time to get out, and to attend programs like this, which are really important because we learn a lot of things that possibly we wouldn't have a chance to learn in a doctor's office or things along those lines. Because we are such a small, intimate group, how many of you came here today specifically because you had questions about how to handle a difficult behavior or where to go, what to do when you have a diagnosis? Okay, so nobody's interested in that. Okay. Maybe if I talk a little bit more about some of the things that I've learned about on my journey of dementia care, that will make people a little bit more comfortable and hopefully help them out. As Eileen said, I worked for over 10 years at Mount Sinai Medical Center. And over that course of 10 years, I had an opportunity to work with thousands of people just like yourself. And it's funny because as a social worker myself, I really didn't feel like I really needed any help because I was the one that everyone came to and I was supposed to have all the answers. And what I learned over those years is that everybody who has memory loss and every family member is going to be different. How you're going to deal with each and every situation that occurs is going to be different. And it starts from the very first moment when you get that diagnosis. Oftentimes, we race our loved ones to the doctor to figure out what's gone wrong and to give a name to it. And what we don't realize is once we receive that diagnosis, it's not as shocking as it may sound for many of us. There's sort of a relief, like now we know what's wrong. But the problem is with most doctors, they're not going to tell you what to do afterwards. And so for many of us, we found ourselves in a position of having our loved ones diagnosed, but not knowing where to go or what to do. And in a way, we would wait and with hopefulness for these medical appointments, hopefully to see the doctor, and hoping for some form of guidance that we were going to receive, either from them or from the doctor's office. And I don't know about you guys, but how many actual minutes do you know that most doctors' plans have factored in to spend time with you?
10?
About 10 minutes. And actually in my book I broke it down to seconds. I don't remember. Pardon?
I think 5.
It's really, it all depends upon, I always say look at the waiting room. That's a pretty good indicator as to what's going to go on and how fast you're going to be shipped out of there. Possibly 5. So you've got 5 minutes that you have a million questions. And obviously, you're not going to be able to get the answers that you need in that short period of time. So what do? We go to the internet, we talk to friends, we talk to families, we try to push together as much information as we can. But, you know, basically what I always tell people is, you know, in order to really learn how to deal with this disorder, you need to go to find people who are really good with this disorder. Because not everybody's the same. And here's a typical example last week. I had a new client. And she called me up hysterically on the phone because her specific issue was placement. She wanted to know when it was going to be time to place her husband. And I don't find that to be an unusual conversation. Typically, I have that conversation with all of my families and clients. But what does happen is that this response came from her 5 minutes in the doctor's office when he said to her, you're going to have to place him soon. And she called me up. She was hysterical. She didn't know what to do. We met at first in my office so I could get a general idea of what the family situation was, what type of care she has in the home, whether a placement was going to be a good option, because sometimes, as we heard from Dolores, the majority of people want to remain in place. Unfortunately, and I'm here to tell you, that's not always possible. So, you know, that's one of the things as caregivers we have to realize, that no matter how much we want our loved ones to remain at home with us, sometimes it could be, we could have a slip and fall. I always say to my caregivers, what's your backup plan if something happens to you? Because for many of us in this room that are caregivers, we know that there's a lot of family members that pretty much are not helping us. They don't come visit, they don't take over on weekends, they're not there for our own little backup plans. So my comment always is when they're sitting there talking with me, I said, so, you know, let's just say, Bunny, if something happened to you tomorrow, and there's nothing wrong with Bunny today, if something was going to happen to you tomorrow, who's going to come take care of you? And basically, I usually get the same thing, oh, my children will fly in. So my first question always is how frequently have you seen your kids this past year? And that sort of gets the conversation rolling, because as family members, we need to know that there is backup plan. So one of the first things that I start doing with families, this will just give you a little bit more of a broader sense of some of the things that you could think about, and these are good questions to take home with you, is one of the things I always tell family members to do is, it's sort of like, you know, we're going into hurricane season, right? How many of you have been in Publix the night before practically a storm is about to hit, and you're all upset that there's no bread or batteries or water in the store? Okay, and for most of us who have been natives of South Florida, I mean, we pretty well know there's a hurricane coming. We plan so far in advance. I mean, I have a box in my house that's filled with things. And I do it during the course of the year, and of course I always forget one or two things, but that's going to bring up something else for you guys. Somebody remind me about evacuation procedures, because we're coming to that time of year. Okay, so when I talk with family members, one of the most important things is, what is your game plan? Something happens to you, you have a slip and fall, you're helping somebody out of bed, you injure your back. Anything can happen to you. As Dolores talked to us, as caregivers, our immune systems are really down low. And we don't realize, because it's so easy for people to say, diet and exercise. Diet and exercise. As a caregiver, I'm here to tell you, you eat whatever you're making for everybody else, and your exercise is really chasing after the person with memory loss, bending over, helping them shower, helping them change their diapers, doing your laundry. That's pretty much your exercise. So when I tell people, when people ask me, well, what do you think of diet and exercise? I said, they're fabulous if you could fit them in, but the reality is, you know, if you have a good flight of stairs in your house, that's pretty darn good exercise. So it's about not beating yourself up. But this is like the really interesting thing, and people say to me all the time, oh my God, I never thought about that. As part as your plan, you need to go around now, before you need it, to find different placements. And I know that sounds horrible, but what happens is that in a crisis situation, that is not the time that you need to make a decision as to where your loved one is going to be going and spending their time. Because I'm also here to tell you that you're going to be spending a lot of time there too. So, you know, there's a lot of different things, and I can always come back later and talk about different placement options. But as family members, nothing is more important than long-term care placement, short-term care placement, and rehab placement. Because the chances are that at some point in your loved one's life, there will be a slip or fall. Nobody can watch somebody, I hear this all the time, oh, it's wonderful with my husband, we have 24/7 care. And I'm like, really? How do you do that? How do you manage that? I mean, do you not eat? Do you not sleep? Do you not go to the bathroom? Do you not take a shower? You can't watch somebody 24/7. It is an impossibility. And even if you have two caregivers in the house, those caregivers have to go to the bathroom too. And you can't plan for things like, oh, I hate to say it, this sounds horrible, but diarrhea. I mean, your caregiver comes over and she's got a bad stomach, or she ate something that wasn't good, or maybe in your home she touched something and then put her hand to the mouth. Because one of the things is that for caregivers, and this is one of the little tips I give them all the time, walk around with those Lysol handy wipes or anything that you can do, and wipe off your doorbells, wipe off your door knockers, wipe off your doorknobs, wipe off your locks. Because what happens is we don't realize the germs that we have on our hands and the germs that other people have on their hands when they come to our homes. And then oftentimes, I mean, I tell a really funny story in the book, but it's really not that funny. I would constantly, on the weekends especially, I would end up getting the most severe stomach aches. Couldn't figure out why. And we had a pool in the backyard, and I'd be out there with the kids, and I'd be out swimming, and of course you're HUD and you're thirsty, so you run inside to grab some ice. Well, our ice maker didn't have an automatic thing. I had to throw the cup in, or I took my hand and I put it in. Well, this has been going on for weeks now, and I couldn't figure out what was causing my stomach ache until I saw my mother's aide opening up and closing the door with the same gloves she had on when she changed my mother's diapers. Now, I realize that I know it sounds like a really, that's grosser than when you read on those websites, my mother just used my toothbrush up. Yeah, I think that one won out. But those are little things that we don't think about, that people do touch things. Our loved ones might not have the best toileting skills on the planet anymore, even though they still want to do it themselves, and we still want them to do it themselves, but they might miss a step or two, like washing their hands before or after. So these are things as caregivers that we need to do for ourselves to make ourselves feel better. So going back to looking at placement, because for me, placement's a really big thing, because I have clients that they need to take a break. And believe it or not, they don't want that aide in their house. A lot of people don't want to have aides in their house. So what do? Well, let's try to find a facility that will allow your loved one to stay for 2 weeks. Now here's the funny part about it. Most of the times people are like, no, I can't do this. Once they come back from their vacation and they realize how much stress they had been under, because we don't realize, guys, as caregivers, because it builds so slowly. One of the first questions people always ask me is, I wish I had a crystal ball for this one, but how much longer do you think they have? I'm like, well, if I knew that, I'd be picking lotto numbers. The whole thing is we don't know how long a person has. But as caregivers, sometimes we know what we can handle and what we can't handle. So I usually tell people, they ask me all the time, well, what are the #1 issues for placement? Well, aggressiveness is a #1 issue for placement. Incontinence is another issue for placement. And don't laugh. When you've got somebody up all night and they're not getting sleep and you're not getting sleep, that's another #1 issue for placement. So what happens is I get these frantic phone calls. People are at the end of the rope. I don't know where to go, what to do. So my whole thing is, let's try to find a facility that you've seen, or let's maybe go shopping now for a facility. It's always good to have a backup plan. Going in, looking at them, seeing how, I always say look at the staff. Look at the friendly staff. And one of the things is that when I took the tour at Eileen's facility, the one thing I noticed was the staff was friendly. And I have to tell you something, a friendly staff means that your loved one is going to get better care. It means they're working together as a team. If you come walking in and you see that the head social worker or the director is always behind a closed door, that's a red flag. Because it means she's either trying to do work, which means she's not out there doing some of the other things that need to be done, or maybe she's in there reprimanding somebody. You're never going to know exactly what it is that's going on. But one of the things I always tell family members is, you always hear this thing about the smell of the facility. Unfortunately, when you're in a facility and everybody's incontinent, you can't always get into the bathrooms to clean up things 1, 2, 3. So I always tell family members, listen, look for staffing first. See the happiness on the staffing face. Look at the residents. How are they treating the residents when they're in there? Because I go into assisted living facilities all the time. And there's some of them that I think are wonderful, and other ones that, I'm sorry, but you wonder how they've been in business for as long as they have. So it's really important that you have that understanding. Another thing is that to ask them, do you have different respite programs? I'm going away for 2 weeks. I'd like to have see if my spouse or my father or my mother can spend like 2 weeks there. Some places will have capabilities of doing that. Just because they do not have capabilities of doing it at that one time, please don't discount them as utilizing them for a facility later on. Different facilities have different rules. And it's not as easy getting somebody into a facility sometimes as you think. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of sign-off, there's medication. It's not like you could just hand them the medication vials and go, here you go. I mean, oftentimes medication is dispensed differently than it is at home. So, those are little things that we need to keep in mind. Now, going back for rehabs, like I said, there will come a point where our loved ones are going to have a slip and fall, or they might need hospitalization for whatever reason. So what happens is, unfortunately, when they're lying in this bed, and they're not getting out and they're not mobile, they're not getting the exercise that they need, the whole point behind also physical therapy is to rehabilitate them so that once you do get them back home, they will be able to stand up and sit down again and make it from the bedroom to the dining room or from the living room to the bedroom. So that's where physical therapy comes in. And I'm a big proponent, for the most part, of having physical therapy done at a reputable place. One of the things is that they have, not only do they have different people, because sometimes your loved one, depending upon their dementia, they just might not like this one person that comes in, but it gives you an opportunity to meet with more professionals in the field. And that's really a #1 thing, especially for caregivers, because we get really, really isolated. Our worlds become smaller and smaller, and the more care we need to give, it really becomes smaller and smaller. So a lot of these bigger rehabs, obviously, they also have a lot of other things that are going on. They have a lot more machines, they have a lot more equipment. And so it helps your loved one, because everybody who comes in contact with your loved one is now also becoming your eyes and ears. So, you know, that's a really big deal. Is most people say, well, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to talk about it, it's never going to happen. I can't begin to tell you the caregivers that I had counseled when I was at Mount Sinai, that they needed to have a little additional help. They needed to have an aide coming in, they need to have family members. And, you know, it never fails, though, with family members. How many times has this happened to you? You're on the phone complaining to your children or your spouse or your partner about what it is your loved one is doing and how they never want to get out of bed, they don't want to shower, they don't want to do anything. All of a sudden, the kids come flying in. That man is out of bed, let's get up, let's go, let's run. And then your family members look at you like you've just lost your mind. You know, there's nothing wrong with daddy. You know, it's all you. You're the one who's making all of this stuff up. That's because people with memory loss will rise to the occasion. And how many of you have not been, I mean, for some of you have been taking care of your loved ones for long periods of time. Other ones, you know, you might be new to this, a little bit new. But do you remember when you'd go to the doctor's office and they'd ask your loved one what was wrong and they'd say, nothing. I don't know why I'm here. I feel fine. My mother was notorious. She would complain about a stomach ache for days. I would get her into the doctor's office. The minute she would see that white coat, how are you doing, Catherine? Oh, I'm fine. Any problems, Catherine? Oh, no, I'm terrific. And I would sit there and my mouth would drop because it was just, it was incredulous to me. I didn't realize how well individuals, even with memory loss, can mask things. And they mask them in doctors' offices too. So sometimes it seems as caregivers that we're the ones who are crying wolf. You know, so if you're at a certain doctor's office and they start discounting you, because you had talked earlier about having this wonderful doctor that's very proactive, you know, there's a lot of doctors out there that aren't. And this is your loved one, this is your caregiver. This is, you are like the CEO of your own company right now, and the company is called you. And you need to take care of your loved one the best way that you can. There is nothing wrong with challenging a doctor. That's why they call it the practice of medicine. They haven't really gotten it down to a science yet. So oftentimes, who do they practice on? Well, they practice on us. And we go along with the flow. But nobody knows your loved one better than you do. So when you get a new medication and you start seeing a change in the person, and even though the doctor says, well, there's going to be some change, well, we all saw what happened with Obama and change, didn't we? That was a good word. Now we got the new word, forward. But what ends up happening is that medication changes typically cause changes in our loved ones that are unappreciated by us as caregivers. Medications can cause individuals to become aggressive. It can cause individuals to become belligerent. It could cause additional falls. So I usually tell caregivers, try to find something else other than medication first. Try to figure out what it is that you can do. Well, one of the things that we could do is utilize, for those of us who can, a day center. And one of the problems with day centers are, I hate to say it, in Dade County, they're few and far between. Day centers are also pretty expensive. So one of the things is, especially when you consider the fact that for caregivers, especially like us, you've given up a lot already. That extra $35, $45 a month, if you're in between Medicaid, if you're in between different financial plans, most insurances, unless you have long-term and care insurance, isn't going to pay for it. And an extra $40 a day, for some of us, we might say, well, what's really the big deal? But you know, as we've heard, people with dementia live very, very, very long times. So it's not like you're paying for something for a child who eventually is going to go into public school. There really is no public school for people with dementia. So you can't say, well, when my kid's 5 years old, I'm going to start putting him in kindergarten. We don't have that for our olders, for our loved ones. It just doesn't work like that. If you look out there, the parks, the libraries, the schools, everything's geared to kids. Unfortunately, when you're taking care of a person with dementia, you find out how limited you can be and where you can get the help that you can. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, which is really important, is a hurricane evacuation plan. And I don't know how many of you have thought about it, how many of you have an evacuation plan. But we're coming up to the time of year where it's really, truly important. How many of you have gone through hurricanes with your loved one with memory loss? Okay. And how many of us lost power? Okay. And how many of us know what it's like to be without power with a person who is agitated and aggressive, and you have to figure out, you know, we lose power, we forget something else. Our toilets don't flush. Okay? We all don't have, many of us don't have running water. Some of us don't have hot water. So it's how are we going to prepare our meals? What are we going to do? And you're taking care of a person with memory loss who's already confused. You have shutters up on the windows. So every moment it looks dark outside. And because there's no electricity, you can't put lights on. And if you do decide to use anything, you're going to start using candles. I'm here to tell you from past experience with my mother, candles and people with memory loss is not a good mix. Unfortunately, they might still know what to do with them, but it's about brushing up against them. It's about them putting in places where they shouldn't be put in. I found out that kitty litter works very well to put out kitchen fires. Or candles that have gone out of control. Well, you've got to. Well, I went for the fire extinguisher, but here's another little tip: read the instructions and practice using it before you need it. Because when you've actually got a fire going on in your home, that is not the time to sit there and start reading the instructions. Okay, and when you've got somebody with memory loss who's cooking in a kitchen and not realizing what they're burning, that's not the time to do it, because my first thought would be, what do you want to throw on this water? Okay, that's the last thing you throw on a fire or on a candle that has wax, because it's going to splatter everywhere and it's going to increase the flame. Okay, I mean, I just learned that, you know, with my mother. That was something I never expected in a million years. So one of the things to know is that there are some assisted living facilities and independent living facilities that might have some, as I like to call, room at the inn. You need to call around and check around to find out if they will take people in case of an evacuation. Yes, Eileen?
Some of our centers will.
Okay.
But our 2 centers on Miami Beach usually end up having to evacuate the patients because
Yeah.
everybody on the beach has to leave.
Right.
And we're talking about respite care. I know that Arch Plaza does respite care.
Okay, and this is when I can't hit that home enough, because there will come a time that you do need a break. And I've seen what happens. I've seen people that have been placed on the floors of hospitals, caregivers, who really thought they could do it by themselves. And then the kids come down. My mother used to have an expression, bring me flowers every day, don't bring them to my grave. And I took that to heart, and I take it the same way when it says about visiting family members. You know, I tell family members, especially the children, because I'm the one who's on the phone with the kids, you know, it's time for you to go down and visit your parents. You know, don't wait till you have to go down and do a Shiva call. That's not the time. They need you now. Because what ends up happening is, yes, we're all busy in our lives, but being a caregiver of a person with dementia, you're beyond busy. You've got about all that you can handle. And for many of my caregivers, it's heartbreaking because they're completely doing it themselves. You know, I'm like one of their only sources of like what we call life support. So what ends up happening is finding these areas of respite as caregivers is really, really important. And not only for you, because you might think right now, oh, this is never going to happen. And I'll go back and say that over again. If I had $1 for every time I had a caregiver or a loved one who said, that's never going to happen for me, you know, I mean, I'd be beyond wealthy right now, because it does happen to the best of us. We can't be somewhere 24/7. And there are people out there who can take, and here it is, I know, I hope you're all sitting down for this one. There are people out there that can actually take better care of our loved ones than we can. I know that sounds surprising and shocking, because that's what I hear every day. Nobody could do as good a job as I'm doing. And I understand what they mean by that. I mean, they're hopefully doing it with love. I say hopefully because as caregivers, let's face it, sometimes the people we're caring for aren't the most wonderful people on the planet. They might argue with us, they might lash out at us, they might tell us, you know, I mean, there's nothing more heartbreaking for us as caregivers when our loved ones don't recognize us anymore. Actually, there is something worse than them not recognizing us. It's calling us by a sibling or somebody else's name who hasn't shown up for the last 5 years. That's probably what's even worse than not remembering us. Because for many of us, it's almost like a slap in the face. See, but what happens is oftentimes they get confused with names. But they know you because of the way you're caring for them. And, you know, one of the things that Dolores didn't talk about was, and, you know, I'll just do it very, very shortly now, and then we'll take some questions. You know, there's over 86 different types of dementia. And, you know, Alzheimer's is just one of them. And it's the one we hear the most about because it's the one that's publicized the most. It's also the one that you go to a doctor, you've got memory loss. Most doctors will sit there and say, oh, they have Alzheimer's disease. And it's not really the reality of what they have. Maybe that's the way they presented that one time. We thought my mother had Alzheimer's disease, and it turned out at autopsy she had Pick's disease. And I'm here to tell you, okay, Pick's disease. Pick's disease is a form of frontotemporal dementia. Out of all the disorders out there, Alzheimer's is probably one of the, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the easier ones to manage. Pick's disease is probably the worst out of all the dementias that you will have to deal with. And if you ask me why, it's pardon?
Because of frontal lobe.
It's a frontal lobe dementia. And what that means is that personality behavior changes, and don't laugh, their memory remains pretty much intact throughout almost the course of this disorder. And it's terrifying and it's scary because some things they can make really good decisions and some things they can't. And because they can make really good decisions, sometimes you assume that they can make good decisions all the time, which is very disarming for caregivers. And we didn't even realize what she had. It took us years before we finally said someone's got to take her to a doctor. And the one thing with frontal temporals are, they've got the most amazing memories. They do not, so you've been aware of that, and it's hard. They can still remember, so they don't want it. Once they see a doctor's giving them bad news, they will never go back to that doctor again. I always tell family members, if the doctor is going to take away that person's driver's license, or if that's something you're requesting, find somebody else in that office to have the doctor break the bad news to that person. Because once your neurologist says, Jim, I'm sorry, you can no longer drive, that person will never go back to that doctor again. So it's something that, you know, if you really like that doctor, you need to make a decision because there's a lot of other ways of getting Jim off the road. I mean, I could tell you hundreds of ways of doing it that have been really successful. But what ends up happening is that if you find a doctor, when you find a doctor that you like, that's not the doctor that you want to have the bad news broken through. Because in the back of your mind, you might say he's going to listen to the doctor. Yeah, he will listen to that doctor, but he will never go back to see that doctor again. So you sort of have to weigh as a caregiver. I always ask caregivers when they call me up, besides how can I help you, what is it that you'd like to see happen? Because oftentimes, if I know what it is they'd like to see happen, then we might be able to do something in another way that's not going to involve the doctors or, excuse me, or certain family members. Okay, well, I know that you all have been here for a very long period of time, and I wish I could spend more time with you. For those of you who would like to spend more time with me, I have my book here, Alzheimer's Disease and Other Dementias, The Caregiver's Complete Survival Guide. I have it over here, and with not paying tax and giving you guys a discount, it would be $15 a book, which is much less than what it is online. But there is hope out there, and I always say to people, a diagnosis is just a diagnosis. But how we care for that person and how we care for ourselves can make all the difference in the world. Okay, so is there any questions?
If we want to call you, to make an appointment.
My number is, I've got business cards here. I can hand my business cards out on the way out.
Yes.
Okay. And any other questions? Yes?
You only do education, you don't have a place for
Well, no. I'm a therapist, so I help and I counsel. I'm like, my new name is the Dementia Whisperer, because I work really, really well with very difficult people. What I do is I prefer, my thing is a private company. I do family counseling, coaching, assessment, home assessments, environmental assessments, changes, referrals, resources. It's one-stop shopping, pretty much. And I'm there to help you. You know, we don't always need help 24/7. We don't need help every month. Sometimes we have questions, and we want to go someplace for answers. So going back to that story, and I'll just finish it up right now. Okay. So she came to my office, and she was in tears. And my Spanish is okay, but she brought her secretary with her, who was also a translator. And as we started talking, I could tell that she was so distraught because the doctor had said, and she was following the doctor's advice, the doctor had said that she's going to need placement soon. So we sat down and we talked for about 45 minutes. Well, we talked for longer, but the whole point was her husband was pretty much bedbound. They lived on Brickell. They had a beautiful apartment that has 2 bedrooms. They had already set up one room as like a hospital type room, which was, you know, very nice. They had round-the-clock aides, and she loved her husband very, very much. They had such an amazing marriage, they never had children. So it's just the 2 of them. So to divide up the 2 of these individuals would have been heartbreaking. I don't care where that facility would have been. So basically what she was looking at me was to validate. Because I work with a lot of doctors, and then they'll send their clients over to me. But that had been on her mind for 3 weeks. I mean, once somebody gets my name from a doctor, they typically don't call me up the next day. I mean, they wait a couple of weeks until there's a crisis situation. For her, that was the crisis situation. But what brought on the crisis situation? What would happen if something happened to her? So when I said we spoke for 45 minutes, we got the 45, we got the rundown, we got everything going on, but I could tell that there was still something there. There was still a major question that wasn't being answered or addressed. And that was really it. She was concerned what happened if something happened to her. So what we did was we came up with a plan. One of the plans is I wanted her to go out and see about 7 facilities, because I think it's really important. One of the things about facilities also, guys, is that I didn't add in before. The most important thing about a facility also is it needs to be appropriate. Oftentimes as caregivers, we see our loved ones either being higher functioning or lower functioning than they actually are. And we put them in, or we want them to be at one place that maybe that place really isn't going to give them the type of care that they need. Or, you know, as caregivers, we walk in this room and we go, oh my God, look at all those old, I love this one, look at all those old people. My father could never be here. He's going to see those old people and run away. Well, I don't know about you, but every time I walk past a big mirror at the mall or at a street and I see my reflection, I'm like, who the heck is that person? That can't possibly be me. Yeah, so we know. Well, which is why also our loved ones with dementia don't recognize themselves in the mirrors, which can cause a lot of environmental problems. We don't realize that sometimes the glass doors in our homes in the afternoon, they give off a reflection. And that's why our loved ones start having these sundowning things. And I do a whole thing in my book about sundowning and dealing with difficult behaviors and explaining the difficult behaviors and coming up with tools and tips and ideas in order to help you. But you know, the one thing for today that I really like you to leave with is that you're not alone. And bravo for you guys to come here today and take your time, because let's face it, you know, those few times that you do get out to do things, I know how valuable they are, you know, because sometimes we have to give up the grocery shopping or the other errands that we go. And it's hard for us, but we're not alone. There are people out there, and the more you know that there's resources out there, the more hope there is. So, you know, even though you might not, you know, you're taking this all in right now, you might not really utilize a lot of it, but down the road, when you're thinking about things, you'll recall some of the conversations and some of the people that you met here through Eileen, and Eileen can always give you the names of all the speakers. So if you forget somebody, it's like, you know, I was listening to this person, who was it, and she could redirect you. But like I said, as a caregiver, and I did this for myself, so this is what I do with clients, you know, I'll set up, based on their loved ones, 6 or 7 different assisted living facilities / nursing homes / rehabs for them to go visit. Because if you take away anything today, I want you to take away that in a moment of crisis, that is not the best time to make a decision. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and have a good day. You're welcome.
It's very informative. Thank you, Natalie. Just to let you know, if any of you would like to tour any of our centers, we're here for you. You have my business card, call me, or call the center. They're listed on the back of the little booklet that is inside your press kit and on the back of the kit. And ask for the administrator and tell them you were at one of our healthcare cafes and you'd like to come and have a tour. If you go and have a tour, stay for lunch so that you can see what it's like and how we care for the residents. It's really important, or our patients. We have patients in all of our centers that have dementia and other health issues, challenges, but families are welcome all the time. Our homes become your patient's home, and we treat every patient like they are part of our family. I'm happy to answer any other questions for you. This is our last program for this session. We hope to return in October, and we're going to have another series of programs that include the importance of dental health and vision and what happens to your skin as you age. And all that. And the different things that we who live in South Florida face in terms of skin care because of the sun. Let's see, we were talking about some other things. Diabetes, which is a huge problem in this community and actually throughout our country. Nutrition and diet, exercise. Maybe we'll have a speaker on laughter and laughter yoga, which is always very helpful to everybody. Stress and the importance of how to manage stress. And we have a lot of other topics. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate it, and as I said, don't hesitate to call if we can help you in any way. That's what we're here for, and here's
Okay, just really fast. Now this is something I'd like for you all to do. This is like a real wonderful stress technique. For those of us who do not have time for the exercise portion of the program, or we're just really, really, really run down from caregiving that day. And this is something that I had learned during my course in clinical hypnotism. It's really quick, it's really fast, but I gotta tell you something even better. It even works. Okay, so you can do it with your eyes open, because I know some people when you say close your eyes, you wonder like the kind of faces we're making around you. Okay, so this is something you do with your eyes open, has absolutely nothing to do with closing your eyes, but you can do it with your eyes closed too. I do it in bed sometimes at night. Okay, here's the activity, or the exercise. You breathe in, and as you're breathing in, you count 5 breaths. You then hold it for the count of 5, and then you release it for the count of 5. Now, some of us might not be able to do for the whole 5. So sometimes we say, let's start with 4, and then over a period of time, you work up to 5. Now, if you can just all take this, because there's a means behind my madness here. So if you just all do it right now, and I usually just count on my fingers as I'm doing it. I want to find out, after you're done with it, I'm going to ask you two very important questions, okay? So we all ready? You can start at your own pace. Just breathe in. Okay, now that's not the 10 times, but that was just after 5 times. What is probably the most important thing that you noticed?
starting to relax.
Okay. There's something even cooler about this.
Smile, happy.
You can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
So the crazy person in your head who's driving you nuts with the 80,000 things you need to do and that you should have done and you have to do and what's going to come later and oh my God, wonder if he's, I get home and I have to change that diaper again or I have to do this or I have to do that. When you do that exercise, and that's why they say do it, 10 times, well just do it. First of all, I do it in my office all the time and clients ask me afterwards, I go, how long did that feel like? And they go, oh my God, that was like the best 5 minutes of my life. I'm like, 5 minutes? I time them when they're doing it. That was like 1 minute when you're doing it 10 times, depending upon how you breathe. But the whole thing is, as caregivers, we can't stop the chatter in our minds sometimes. So this is a really good exercise, to even try doing before you jump out of bed first thing in the morning, because the morning sets the stage for how your day is going to be as a caregiver. And then when you're going to bed at night and you've got, oh, I only wish I only had like 4 more hours today because like 4 more hours I could do blah, 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 blah. This is the thing when you're lying in bed or when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you have that little anxiety attack. Try this exercise and, do me a favor, drop me a line, tell me how it works. Because people really love it, it's easy, it's effective, and it's going to stop that, that crazy talk in your head. Okay, thank you. Thank you.